I didn't know my life was about to split cleanly in two that Tuesday morning. One version of me was still standing in a mechanic's office, blinking under buzzing fluorescent lights, trying to understand why my hands wouldn't stop shaking. The other version, the one I became, was already running calculations in my head. Exits, timelines, who I could trust, how long I had before the man I married realized I wasn't walking blindly into his trap. If I had gone home that day, I would be dead by Saturday. I'm a 34-year-old construction company owner in Portland, Oregon. 3 years ago, I truly believed I had finally beaten the odds. I had clawed my way out of absolute poverty, built a business from nothing, married a man I thought loved me, not for my money, not for my success, but for who I was. I was wrong. That morning started like any other. Coffee on the counter, my husband complaining lightly about a strange noise in his Lexus, a quick kiss goodbye, normal, harmless, domestic. By noon, I was staring at a plastic evidence bag containing a burner phone, a vial of white powder, and a notebook written in my husband's handwriting, documenting my daily schedule with surgical precision. By 12:30, I knew he wasn't cheating. He was planning my death. A car accident, a mountain road, cut brake lines, fentanyl planted in my truck to make it look like I'd been secretly using. A $2 million life insurance policy split neatly between him and another man. I remember the exact moment the realization settled into my bones. Not panic, not tears, but a cold, clarifying certainty. The man I married didn't want a divorce. He wanted a payout. And he thought I was too busy, too tired, too trusting to notice. He underestimated me. What he didn't understand, what neither of them understood, was that I had survived things far worse than betrayal. I had survived hunger, loss, poverty that hollowed you out from the inside. I had built my life with blistered hands and sleepless nights, and I wasn't about to let anyone erase me for money. Not quietly, not easily, and definitely not without consequences. Before I tell you how everything unraveled, you need to understand where I came from, because that history is the reason I didn't break when I learned the truth. I grew up poor. Not the poetic kind of poor people romanticize later, but the kind that clings to your skin. The kind that teaches you early that security is fragile and kindness often comes with conditions. My father was a day laborer. Strong hands, weak will. He drank himself into an early grave when I was 12. One night he simply didn't wake up, and the world didn't pause long enough for us to catch our breath. After that, it was just my mother and me. She cleaned houses for wealthy families, scrubbed their toilets, washed their floors, smiled politely while her hands cracked and bled from harsh chemicals. I remember watching her soak her fingers in warm water at night, biting her lip so she wouldn't cry. I learned early what survival looked like. We lived in cold apartments where the heaters never worked. I wore secondhand clothes that never fit quite right. Hunger wasn't dramatic, it was constant. A dull ache that became part of you. So I made myself a promise I would never live like that again. I put myself through community college while working 3 jobs. Coffee replaced sleep. Determination replaced comfort. After graduation, I took a chance, borrowed $5,000 from a contractor who saw potential in me and started my own construction company. 10 years of grinding followed. Failed bids, long nights, contracts that barely broke even. But slowly, the work spoke for itself. By the time I turned 34, I owned a successful company with 40 employees and major commercial contracts across 3 states. I lived comfortably but modestly. No flashy cars, no extravagant house. I invested carefully because I knew what instability felt like, and I never wanted to taste it again. That was the woman I was when I met my husband, Mark. We met at a charity gala 3 years ago. He was polished, charming, confident in that effortless way that made people lean in when he spoke. He told me he worked in marketing for a pharmaceutical company. He asked thoughtful questions, listened. I was cautious. Too many people had suddenly become interested in me once my business success became public. But Mark felt different. He insisted on splitting the bill on dates, talked about partnership, not lifestyle, spoke about building something meaningful together. For the first time, I let myself believe I could have love without losing myself. We married after a year. Looking back now, I can see the red flags I ignored. He deflected questions about his family. Packages arrived that he hid quickly. His phone was always face down, always locked. When I suggested he might take time off work so we could think about starting a family, he became defensive, angry in a way that didn't fit the moment. But I was busy, consumed by work. I had just secured the largest contract of my career, a $4.2 million renovation of the Riverside Commercial Complex downtown. 18 months of work that would cement my company's reputation. I worked 70-hour weeks, came home exhausted, trusted that patience meant loyalty. I thought love was waiting quietly for me at home. I had no idea it was watching me, measuring my schedule, counting my habits, planning my exit. There's a specific kind of unease that creeps in slowly, so quietly you mistake it for stress. That was what filled our house during those months before everything collapsed. Mark became distant. Not in an obvious way. Not cold or cruel, just subtly absent. He asked fewer questions about my day. He smiled a second too late when I came home. His patience felt rehearsed, like something he'd practiced in front of a mirror. At night, he lay beside me, scrolling on his phone, the screen angled away. If I shifted closer, he'd lock it without thinking. Muscle memory. Work stuff, he'd say lightly if I noticed. Clients, yeah, nice, when I asked who kept texting so late. I believed him because believing him was easier than pulling at a thread I was too tired to follow. His behavior around money also shifted. He asked casual questions, too casual. How much did the Riverside contract net again? Do you ever worry about burnout insurance-wise? Do you know what our policy would cover if something happened to you? I remember laughing it off. You planning to push me down the stairs? He smiled back, too smoothly. God, no. I just like to be prepared. Looking back, preparation was exactly what he was doing. His interest in my schedule intensified. He memorized it without asking. Knew which nights I came home late, which routes I took to job sites, which bars I stopped at when a day went sideways. Don't work yourself to death, he'd say, pressing a kiss to my cheek. I didn't hear the double meaning. His family added to the pressure. Subtle comments, side glances. You're lucky she takes care of things, his mother once said, her smile tight. Must be nice, his brother added, eyes flicking to my car. I felt like a guest in my own marriage sometimes. Useful, admired, slightly resented. Still, I pushed forward. The Riverside project consumed everything. Permits, suppliers, subcontractors. My foreman, Hector, took on more responsibility than ever. I barely noticed how patient Mark was being about my absence. Too patient. Then came the Tuesday morning in September, the morning that should have been forgettable. Over breakfast, Mark mentioned his Lexus was making a rattling noise. He had an important client meeting and asked if I could take it to the mechanic. Just take my truck, I suggested. He shook his head. Not a great look for pharma clients. I agreed without thinking. That single decision, taking his car instead of mine, saved my life. As I drove toward the shop, I had no idea I was carrying the evidence of my own planned death in the trunk, or that the man I trusted most had already decided when I would stop breathing. Tommy's auto repair smelled like it always did. Burnt coffee, motor oil, and old metal. Familiar. Safe. I'd been bringing my vehicles there for nearly a decade, long before I ever met Mark. Tommy wasn't just a mechanic. He was someone I trusted. That's why the tone of his voice on the phone stopped my heart. You need to come back here, now. Something in the way he said it, tight, controlled, wrong, made my stomach drop. Is it bad? I asked, already standing. Just come back, he repeated. Then the line went dead. By the time I returned to the shop, Tommy didn't greet me in the waiting area like usual. Instead, he motioned silently for me to follow him through the back door. His office was small and cluttered, metal filing cabinets, faded military posters, a coffee maker that looked older than both of us. He locked the door behind us. That's when my pulse started pounding. Why are you locking the door? I asked. You need to sit down, he said quietly. He reached under his desk and placed a clear plastic bag on the table. Inside was a burner phone, a small spiral notebook, and a glass vial filled with white powder. My mouth went dry. Before you ask, Tommy said, voice trembling in a way I had never heard, you cannot go home after this. Do you hear me? You absolutely cannot go back to that house. What is this? I whispered. I found it under the spare tire. False compartment. Professionally done. Only noticed because the weight felt wrong when I rotated the tires. I stared at the bag, my brain refusing to cooperate. Tommy opened the notebook. The handwriting was unmistakable. Marks. Dates, times, locations. My schedule. Every morning departure. Every return home. Notes about how tired I was. how deeply I slept, which nights I drank exactly 2 beers. I flipped a page. Perfect window of opportunity. Another page. Birthday dinner, make it memorable, last one. The final page had 2 words written in heavy ink. This weekend. My vision tunneled. Check the phone, Tommy said grimly. The messages were between Mark and someone saved as M. I read them slowly, each word carving something hollow inside me. Car accident. Mountain road. Insurance pays out. $2 million split clean. Plant fentanyl in her truck. Brake line is easy to cut. I dropped the phone. My husband wasn't cheating. He was planning my murder. And he'd already chosen how it would look. An exhausted businesswoman, secretly using pills, lost control on a dangerous road. Open and shut case. I felt my knees give. Tommy caught my arm. Stay with me. Who is M? I asked, barely breathing. Marshall Dixon. The name hit me like a blow. Marshall, the smooth-talking consultant Mark had introduced me to months earlier. The one who'd pushed for business deals I'd declined. The one whose smile never reached his eyes. Tommy leaned forward. You disappear. Today. Right now. Empty your accounts. Don't warn anyone. I looked at the bag again. At the evidence of a life I almost lost. Shock gave way to something colder. Focused. They thought I was expendable. They were wrong. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. Not then. There's a strange calm that comes when fear reaches a certain depth, when your mind realizes panic won't save you, but precision might. My body felt hollow, like someone had scooped me out and replaced everything with ice. Tommy kept talking, but his words floated, distant. Fentanyl. Enough to kill 20 people. They'd plant it after you're gone. I kept seeing Mark's face in my mind. The way he kissed my forehead every morning. The way he said, drive safe. The way he joked about my long hours like they were an inconvenience, not an alibi. How long? I asked. At least 3 months, Tommy said. Probably longer. 3 months of sleeping next to someone who was rehearsing my death. I sat back, pressing my palms flat against the desk, grounding myself in the cold metal. My first instinct wasn't revenge, it was responsibility. What did I miss? How did I let this happen? I replayed every conversation, every deflection, every late-night text. The anger didn't come all at once. It arrived quietly, wrapped in shame. Not because I was weak, but because I had trusted. Tommy broke the silence. If you go to the police right now, it might not stick. They'll say you planted this. Dixon will have lawyers. And if they panic, they'll move faster, I finished. He nodded. Exactly. So I made the hardest decision of my life. I vanished. I withdrew every dollar I could access without raising alarms. Cashier's checks. Cash. I lied smoothly to the bank manager, smiled like everything was normal, stored the money somewhere Mark didn't know existed. I called Hector, my foreman, told him I had a family emergency, asked him to take over Riverside for 2 weeks. You don't sound okay, he said carefully. I'm not, I admitted, but I will be. I called my attorney, Rebecca, asked her to prepare a sealed envelope. Everything opened only if I died or disappeared. By late afternoon, my life was officially paused. By evening, my phone started buzzing. Mark. Again and again. Where are you? Tommy said you picked up the car. Please call me. I'm worried. I turned the phone off. The motel room I checked into smelled like stale smoke and regret. I sat on the bed, staring at the wall, and finally let the truth land. The man I married didn't want me gone from his life. He wanted me gone from existence. I wasn't going to confront him yet. Not with tears, not with accusations. I needed proof, I needed time, and most of all, I needed to survive. And that meant learning how my husband thought. Disappearing bought me time, but it also lit a fire under them. For the first 48 hours, I stayed completely invisible. I didn't leave the motel except at night. I paid cash. I used a burner phone that only 2 people had the number to, Tommy and Rebecca. I slept in short, shallow bursts, waking every time a car passed too slowly outside my door. Meanwhile, Mark unraveled. Tommy texted me updates in clipped, careful messages. He came by the shop again, asked if you were acting strange. I told him you seemed tired. Normal. Mark filed a missing persons report by the 2nd day. I watched it all unfold remotely through the security cameras I had installed in our house years earlier, ironically, to protect us. Now they protected me. He played the role perfectly. Concerned husband, soft voice, hands trembling just enough. I'm just scared, he told the police. She's been under so much pressure lately. Pressure, burnout, mental health. The narrative was forming. Then his family stepped in. His mother called my phone repeatedly, leaving voicemails that swung between worry and accusation. "This is cruel, disappearing like this. You're embarrassing my son. If something happened, you should have trusted us." Trusted them with my life? Friends followed the same script. Mark's coworkers hinted I'd had a breakdown, that I'd always been intense, that maybe success had finally cracked me. No one questioned why my husband seemed oddly calm for someone whose wife had vanished. Except one person, Marshall Dixon. I hacked into our home Wi-Fi and listened. "He didn't just leave," Mark whispered into his phone one night, pacing the living room. "She took money, a lot of it." "How much?" Marshall snapped. 300,000. Silence. "That was supposed to be our money," Marshall said coldly. That's when I knew they were turning on each other. I hired a private investigator, Rick. He owed me a favor from years back, and within days he started digging into Marshall's past. What he found was horrifying. Marshall wasn't just desperate, he was practiced. Patterns emerged. Wealthy women, affairs, sudden deaths, financial ruin, a boating accident, a mountain road crash, brake failures. I met one of them, Christine, in a public park. "He ruined my life," she said without hesitation. "My husband died the same way, mountain road, brakes." Her voice didn't shake, it was deadened by certainty. By the end of that week, I understood the full scope. Mark hadn't invented this plan. He'd been recruited. And now that I'd vanished, the pressure was building, the lie was cracking, the timeline was slipping. They needed to act. Which meant I couldn't stay hidden forever. I wasn't prey anymore. I was setting the trap. There's a moment, right before dawn, when the world feels suspended, not asleep, not awake, just quiet enough for the truth to catch up with you. That's when it hit me. I was sitting on the edge of the motel bed, fully dressed, shoes on, lights off. I hadn't slept. My coffee had gone cold hours earlier. The city outside was silent, and for the first time since Tommy showed me that plastic bag, I felt the weight of it all settle into my chest. If I made one wrong move, I would die. Not metaphorically, not emotionally. Actually die. And the people who would cry the loudest at my funeral would be the ones who signed off on the plan. I thought about my childhood, my mother's cracked hands, my father's empty bottle, the nights I went to bed hungry and promised myself I'd survive. I had survived everything up to this point, and yet here I was, hunted by the person I had chosen to trust most. The betrayal wasn't loud, it was quiet and corrosive. I replayed moments from our marriage that now felt poisoned. The way Mark asked about my insurance coverage, the way he encouraged me to drive mountain roads for fresh air, the way he insisted on keeping the house lights on when I worked late, so it would look like I was home. I realized something then that nearly broke me. He hadn't hated me. He'd studied me. I curled forward, elbows on my knees, hands gripping each other until my knuckles went white. For the first time, tears came. Not dramatic sobs, but silent, burning ones that slid down my face without sound. I wasn't mourning the marriage. I was mourning the version of myself who believed in it. There was a knock on the motel door. My heart slammed against my ribs. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. Another knock, then footsteps moving away. I checked the peephole. No one. I sat back down, shaking now, adrenaline flooding in too late. That's when the darkest thought surfaced, the one I'd been avoiding. What if I can't beat them? What if all I managed to do is delay the inevitable? I was tired, bone-deep tired, tired of hiding, tired of calculating, tired of living like a ghost while my own husband played the victim on television. For a brief, terrifying moment, I understood why people give up. Then my phone buzzed. A message from Tommy. She was at the shop again, crying this time, said she's scared for you, asked if you ever seemed depressed. That snapped something into place. He was rewriting my story. If I stayed hidden, I'd die twice, once physically, once in reputation. I wiped my face, stood up, and looked at myself in the mirror. I didn't see a victim. I saw a woman who had built her life from nothing, and who was done running. This was the bottom, which meant the only direction left was up. By sunrise, my fear had hardened into clarity. I wasn't going to disappear quietly while my husband rewrote me into a tragic headline. If this ended, it would end on my terms, with the truth exposed so completely that no lawyer, no performance, no amount of money could bury it. The key wasn't confrontation. It was confession. People who think they're in control talk too much. I called Mark from my burner phone late that night, disguising my voice, tight, breathless, scared. "It's me," I whispered. "Don't say my name." There was a sharp intake of breath. Where are you? Someone's following me, I said. I can't explain over the phone. I need to see you, alone. Silence stretched. Then his voice softened. Okay, where? The Riverside site, tonight, midnight, 3rd floor, come alone. I'll be there, he said immediately. Too quickly. I spent the evening preparing. Cameras, microphones, redundant storage, everything hidden among steel beams and concrete columns. I didn't need theatrics. I needed their own words, unfiltered. At 11:45 p.m., headlights cut through the darkness. Mark wasn't alone. Marshall Dixon stepped out beside him. I almost smiled. They thought I was the bait. I activated the speaker system. I'm here, my recorded voice echoed. 3rd floor. They climbed the stairs cautiously. When they reached the top, I cut the lights. Emergency red illumination bathed the space in shadow. I know everything, I said through the speaker. The burner phone, the brake lines, the fentanyl. Mark froze. Marshall grabbed his arm. We're leaving. Too late, I said calmly. It's all recorded. Panic cracked their composure. You said this was foolproof, Mark shouted. You were sloppy, Marshall snapped back. Just like the others. The others. That was enough. I flooded the space with light. Marshall reached for a gun. I'd planned for that too. The sirens outside weren't a lie. And when the police stormed in, there was nowhere left for them to run. They didn't arrest me. They arrested the truth. The interrogation lasted 6 hours. I answered every question slowly, carefully, methodically, like someone who had already rehearsed the truth 100 times in her head. Because I had. I laid everything out from the beginning. Tommy's discovery at the shop, the false compartment, the burner phone, the messages detailing my murder, the fentanyl vial, the brake line plan, the life insurance policy. I handed over recordings, photos, transcripts. I watched the detective's expressions shift from skepticism to concern to something darker when the full picture emerged. Mark didn't cry in the interrogation room. He stared at the table, jaw clenched, hands shaking only when Marshall wasn't looking. Marshall, on the other hand, unraveled fast. He contradicted himself, lost his temper, tried to charm, then threaten, then bargain. By dawn, they were in separate holding cells. The story broke quietly at first, then loudly. Once the evidence surfaced, everything Mark had built his narrative on collapsed. The missing wife wasn't unstable. The devoted husband wasn't worried. The breakdown wasn't mental, it was criminal. His family turned on him when the texts were released. His mother stopped defending him once she saw his handwriting outlining my schedule like a kill plan. His brother refused to testify on his behalf. Friends disappeared. Employers cut ties. Marshall's past came roaring back. Women stepped forward. Old cases reopened. Patterns undeniable. The trial lasted 8 months. 8 months of sitting in court, listening to people dissect my life like a case study. 8 months of seeing the man I married reduced to a defendant who couldn't meet my eyes. Marshall received multiple life sentences without parole. Mark was sentenced to 35 years. No parole. No appeals. When the judge read the verdict, I felt no triumph. Only release. I didn't look back as they led him away. I walked out of the courthouse alone, the air feeling lighter than it had in years. The world hadn't ended. It had corrected itself. 2 years after the trial ended, I received a letter. The return address was a correctional facility. I knew who it was from before I opened it. I didn't rush. I made tea. I sat by the window. I let the moment arrive on my terms, because for the first time in a long while, everything in my life was mine to control. Mark's handwriting was smaller than I remembered, less confident. He wrote that he never thought I would outsmart him, that he had mistaken my quiet discipline for softness, that he had believed my strength was only professional, not personal. He said he was sorry, not in a dramatic way, not in a redemptive way, just in a small, selfish way, like someone grieving the life they lost, not the damage they caused. I burned the letter, not out of anger, out of closure. I didn't need apologies from someone who had already shown me who he was. I didn't need explanations. I didn't need revenge. I needed distance, and I already had it. I rebuilt my life slowly, deliberately, not as an act of defiance, but as an act of respect for the woman who survived. I stayed in construction, expanded carefully, treated my employees like family because I knew how rare loyalty truly is. I slept better, ate better, laughed more. Trust didn't come back all at once, but self-trust did. And that was enough. Here's the lesson I wish I had learned sooner, and the one I want you to hear clearly. Love does not require you to ignore your instincts. Loyalty does not demand blindness. And strength is not loud. It's the quiet decision to stay alive when someone else profits from your silence. Some people don't want partnership. They want access. And the moment you stop being useful, they don't walk away. They calculate. If something in your life feels wrong, listen. If someone studies you more than they love you, step back. If your peace disappears around a person, that's not coincidence. I survived because I paid attention, just in time. Every morning now, when I wake up and feel the simple privilege of breathing, I'm grateful. Not because the world is safe, but because I learned how to protect myself in it. And that changed everything.